What's happening in the canine industry? For all the latest news, views, and expert opinions, stay right here for the Canine Paradigm. You'll hear from industry leaders, experts, doyens of the industry, learned colleagues, movers and shakers, and the odd randy guest. Get the latest insights and expert advice from both here and abroad from the people in the know. Now, here are your hosts, Glenn Cook and Pat Stewart. And I'm Lofty Fulton, and I'm out of here.
Hey, I need to tell you something.
Oh, God, what is it?
Some time ago, we did an ad episode where we talked about how we were going to get better with our ads.
I was wondering where you were going.
Yeah.
We're so shit at the ads.
That's what we said. We said, we're so shit, we're going to get better, and we just didn't.
We don't. We're so full of shit. All right, well, here they are. We got 5 sponsors currently.
All right, who are they?
First is the OG, the Einzelwiener.
Oh, that knob.
The bullfed.
Yeah.
No, he's the OG. He's been with us
He's
since the
good.
start.
No, he's good.
He
He's
is
good.
going to
He's a
sell
good
you
boy.
whatever you need.
Yep.
He'll get it. What you should do is contact Jason from Ineswick Dog Queer with some peculiar product, tell him you want it, and make him get it in and sell
Yeah.
it to you. Even if you could buy it somewhere else, just make sure he gets it in for you.
Just make that bastard work.
But in all honesty, I'd say 90% of my shit comes from him, and it's all the best stuff.
I did see some feedback on our forum where somebody was really intrigued about your handler package, the one that you got from Jason. Obviously, it works. Like,
Yeah, it's
people are
good.
paying attention to the
Yeah, the
ads.
leashes
That's
are good.
great. Even though we're shit at this, we do a terrible job of actually trying to keep things updated. It's great to see that the people who are investing in our show are actually getting some leeway.
Yep. Mate, I've heard that your wife sells some canine products.
My wife is doing great guns at the moment. I said before that she's been supported terrifically in the United States, which has been good, but I will swing that back home and say that so many more people in Australia are doing it. And it's great to see, like, there are people finally in the sporting dog world who are starting to prioritize nutrition for their dogs. And I know them. I can see them when Narelle comes in and says, oh, guess who bought some product off me for the first time. So
Are you saying there's no patient confidentiality?
no, there's
You're
patient
aware-
confidentiality.
Oh, sorry.
It's just a
purchaser
mailing list.
confidentiality.
Well, it's a mailing list.
Are you aware my dog is taking pee, collagen, and what's the other thing he takes?
Antinol.
Antinol.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been on that.
Antinol is not Narelle's business, but I've got to do a shout out for Antinol. They are absolutely fantastic. They're very supportive of our show. Whenever we've done seminars and so forth, they have been first to dip their hand in their pocket. They are very generous with their product. But let me just say, all that aside, their generosity and their advertising and marketing, let me just say on the other side of that, their product is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it does work. It's very beneficial.
For sure.
It's one of those things where they say Antinol for every dog every day. I totally agree with that. Narelle has even supported that. When people have asked them about her product, she says the 2 things that I would absolutely give to you is Antinol and her Gut Protect formula.
Yeah, right.
Gut Protect is like her holy grail of
Like
her
the
whole
flagship
range.
of the range.
This is not me market talking, okay? Because
This is an ad.
This is an ad, but this is not me doing marketing.
But we've already pointed out we're shit at ads.
I know. Of all the things that she sells, and she sells some killer product, but the one thing that she does sell, which I absolutely agree with her, every dog should have this product, is the Gut Protect.
Really?
100%. It's nothing that they need for being sick. It's something that they need to do just to maintain great gut balance.
Okay.
And gut balance is like mental health. It's one of those things that you absolutely want to get control around. So products like Antinol, great for every day. Gut Protect, great for every day. There's other products that aren't even related to hers called Rosehip Vital and stuff like that. Absolutely fantastic for dogs to be on every sort of day. But I know there's other people we need to talk about. If you want to learn more about Narelle's products, go to our website, canineceuticals.com. I think it's I think it's
You'll figure it out.
it's .com or
Canine
.com.au. It's one of those.
No one
but-
types that shit anyway. Everyone just Googles it and
Yeah,
then goes,
just Google it.
yeah.
You'll find it.
Hey,
Yeah.
George Kittredge, I reckon we should get him on the show.
We should have George Kittredge on the show.
Yeah.
Not only is he devilishly handsome,
Yep.
but he's got a fantastic, one-of-a-kind product that I've never seen replicated anywhere in the world. You and me were getting a car ride by him. We got to see the prototype firsthand.
And then his bike got stolen with the prototype on it.
did,
Remember that?
yes.
Yeah. But anyway, George has Rowdy Hound Dog Box. And
Yes.
so it's a crate that goes on the back of your motorbike so that your dog can go everywhere with you. And
Yeah.
it's cool as shit. It's a great idea. You should
Yeah.
totally get one. Tailored Canines in Canada.
Yeah,
Do you know that Taylor from Tailored Canines is hosting Jazz Whiting later in the year?
I do know that. Yes,
Yes.
I saw the ad. Very good.
Yep.
Not
So-
only is she doing great stuff with her Tailored Canine,
Her training business.
her training business, but she's also getting a fantastic trainer over there to help with her tailored training.
She is. And finally, Barbara de Groot
The sugar mama from the Heart Dog
From the
Training.
Heart Dog Training.
Just fucking throws cash at us.
Just supports the show. God bless her.
Yeah. I think later on in the year when Narelle and I are over doing a seminar with Melanie Benware, Barbara de Groot is coming over.
Wonderful.
I think she has put down a like, and I said, you better come, sugar mama, and she gave me a thumbs up. So hopefully she's going to be there and I can give her some love to repay us for all the kindness and support that she's thrown at us and ask nothing in return.
All right. That's our ad.
Yeah.
That one's good to go for at least another 4 years. You'll hear from us then. Welcome back to the Canine Paradigm. I'm your host, Pat Stewart. I'm joined in studio by my co-host, Glenn Cook.
We missed a week. We got punished for it.
We did.
And you have to explain yourself, sir, because people are coming to me saying, I ruined their drive. I ruined their mowing experience.
So I was in Queensland last week, had a really wonderful time, actually. Kirsty had me up there. I did a 2-day seminar. It's the new format that I'm doing, which
The pros and cons?
Yeah, pros and cons. My issue is that it builds on everything else. And so, I kind of thought I've been teaching a similar seminar format for years and sort of refining that and getting that really down to how I like it. And then, I filmed the course. And so that's the theory day of the seminar. And to me, that's the very basis of dog training, right? So as I explain to people when I do like a quick run through of it at the start of the new seminar, I say like, everything that we're about to sort of go through, the pros and cons stuff, is about the different ways you can do these fundamental principles of dog training. And we draw it all up and we go like, you don't have to like all of this and you don't have to agree with me, but this is the bedrock, right? Like that motivation is the core thing. Motivation is binary. It's towards and away. You can make it more complicated by turning that into operant conditioning. But like at the end of the day, all these things that we put on the board, how positive reinforcement works, how negative reinforcement works, all of this, they're the facts of dog training. It's the very bedrock that when you strip everything else away, that's the truth. How much of it you want to get involved in, that's a choose your own adventure, but this is the truth. And so I have to do kind of a recap of that at the start of each seminar because I need to make sure everybody kind of knows that. And then I sort of thought, well, people, they want a different show. It's usually the same sort of people at these seminars, but it's not. And so I have to go through this stuff in more detail because I need people to understand these bedrock truths. So I'm still figuring out the format a little bit because it ends up with me talking more than I would like and not as much dog work as I would like. So I'm still figuring that out. There's more refinement to go through with that. It seems like you're just trying to squeeze more money out of people, but if everybody had been through my online course before they came to the seminar, then awesome, because we can hit the ground running and then go into the pros and cons part, which that I'm really enjoying. And so the way that I frame that at these seminars is we talk about first, how do you show up for the dog? What kind of trainer do you present as? We sort of go through that. Are you sort of still? Are you unemotional? And, imagine proper free shaping. Are you that? Or we go into the like hardcore cheerleader stuff of like exuberant games and through play and using high arousal, and what are the pros and cons of all that? And of course, we discuss that you have to choose your own adventure, right? And take the pros that you like from here and discard the cons and take the pros that you like from over this side and come up with your own formula. And I show my formula and we get out a bunch of dogs and I show this is why I present this way to this dog and this is why I present this way to this dog. And we change that. And I frame that around these like wearing a series of masks so that in the session, I kind of think that's how people are all the time in their lives is that you wear different masks, whether you want to admit that or not.
Oh,
people
that's
think,
an absolute fact.
Yeah.
You wear your
as,
grandmother mask, you wear
you can be as authentic as you like and still you wear different masks because
it's appeasing the crowd that you're with.
Yeah. And being the person that's appropriate in front of those people in the fact that like in front of my kids, I wear a very different mask to the way that I talk to you right now, right? Like it's a different thing. It's the same with dogs. And through showing them these different masks, like this is who I am when things go well and this is who I am when you're not understanding or where you do the wrong thing. And I can narrow down behaviors via that stuff. And then we go through the pros and cons of training for action and training for abstinence. And so, because you have to do both those things when you're a dog trainer. And so sometimes when you look at something, you go, okay, am I going to stop this dog from doing the problem thing, or am I going to train the dog to do something else? And that can be quite abstract as well. It's not as linear as people sometimes think. Like, plenty of times everybody that's ever been in anyone's home to do dog training, very often the problem that they have, you go, hey, look, I can stop your dog chewing up the couch for sure, right? We can punish that away. But if you just walk the dog more often, he ain't going to do that. Like there's multiple ways to fix things, and some of them involve training the dog to do something, and some of them involve training the dog to not do something. And there's pros and cons for all of that. So we go through all of that, and then we bring out dogs and we do it. So I'm loving teaching this seminar. I really, really enjoy it, but I'm still just trying to figure out a way for myself to be able to hit the ground running and deliver more of that nuanced stuff rather than just sort of having to rehash a lot of the bedrock basics of dog training. So because it all builds, I need people to understand that. So I was up in Queensland doing that, and then we did a 5-day boot camp straight afterwards, which this is one of the best ones I've done. I really loved it.
What made it so memorable?
So when I started doing the boot camps, we did one here in Australia. It was during COVID, and it was in that like weird little time for that like couple of weeks
where we were allowed out of jail.
We were allowed to do stuff for a very short period of time.
When our overlords decided that they would
that they needed a little bit more money put into the economy, so we were able to do things for a little bit. Anyway, so I did one then, and it was a 9 to 5 kind of thing, all right, and that was good. But then when I started doing them in the US at Fabian's place, we all live in. This was the first time in Australia that we've pulled off a live-in and train at the place.
Right. Yeah, because you've done it at Alex's place.
I've done it at Alex's place, and I've done ones in Queensland before where we worked at one place and we all lived at another.
Yep.
But this was the first time. Kirsty did this amazing job. We're going to do multiple of the same again next year, I think. She just rented this giant like farm stay house. So it's this giant mansion. So it's beautiful. We're in the like hinterland of the Sunshine Coast. So we're on a farm, like in a beautiful location.
Yeah, it's lovely up there, up around Noosa. And
So everybody stays there. Their dogs are all there. So it's kind of a 24/7 course. We train, like the way we work these things, it's Monday to Friday. The mornings until lunchtime is theory. Then the afternoons until dinner time is like formal practical. And then in the evening, because everybody's there with their dogs, they got to live with their dogs. So I'm just kind of with them through those times. And so it's a lot of conversations. It's a lot of, the idea is that they have kind of 24/7 access to me to ask questions, and the morning is formal, but then everything else, well, the first session of the day is a little bit more formal.
It's a bit of a think tank.
Exactly. And so the idea is that I want to sort of pass on as much knowledge as I possibly can across the broader spectrum of things. And so the reason this one was good was that it was a true live-in. Like, we were eat, sleep, learn all in the same building, and then the yard of the place, it was a farm, right? So there's a big paddock yard, and we could train there. And there was a really diverse group of dogs, from sport dogs to pet dogs and everything in between, therapy dogs, really diverse group of people that all got along really well. So it was wonderful. I had a really good time. They're exhausting weeks because, like I say, I give, I try to give myself entirely to people. It's expensive. They pay a good amount of money to be there. So I really try and provide the value for that. And I feel confident that I do that. It's only good feedback from it. So I feel really good about it, but we missed a week because we're doing that.
Because of that. It's interesting when you were talking about the scalable size of investment, like people have to put into it. It relates, obviously Narelle and I have a lot of conversations about that when she's doing product design and she's trying to put something to market, because sometimes you feel guilty about the sort of price that you pay for it, or sometimes you're challenged over the price that you put to it. So often whenever you put a product or a service to market, you've got to kind of think about, what is it that I'm giving you, but what do I have to ensure that I get back from this to make sure that I can push forward forevermore, or for as long as the community allows me to do so. Because I've spoken to Narelle about it when she's made supplements before, and she said to me, I could do this much cheaper. Like I could do what everybody else does, but then they have to use double the amount of product.
Yeah.
So they're not actually saving, because A, they're getting something that it may or may not work, because the cofactors that are, I'm talking bullshit here because I don't know the science behind it.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. That she's got the highest quality stuff that's going to work as well as
exactly
it can,
right.
which costs
so
more money.
When she researches, this is not just something that she's just piecing together. And it's the same thing for you when you're putting courses together, or any other person who's putting out their quality information that it's accessible through a paywall. I mean, what people have got to understand, and it kind of goes back, while you were talking about this, it kind of goes back to a reminder of a little thing that's been circulating around on social media. A ship breaks down. The captain of the ship needs this giant cruiser to be fixed. So they pull it out of mooring and they bring this guy in. And he comes along and he looks along the ship and he gives it 2 bangs with a hammer, and suddenly the ship springs to life. A couple of days later in the mail, he gives them an invoice for $20,000. And the ship's captain and the shipping crew are aghast that they get this massive figure from him. And they said, we need a breakdown on how you came to give us a $20,000 fee based on being here for 2 minutes and hitting the side of the ship with a hammer. And he said, well, it was only $2 to hit the ship with a hammer, but it was $19,980 to have the 20 years of experience to know where to hit the ship with the hammer. It's the same thing when you're building a product or a service. You're not only paying for the information, you're paying for the painstaking years of experience that the person has put into the development and the structure to give you something of quality that you can then take forward. And you know that what you're building your foundations on is substance.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just the rantings of a mad fucker on the internet who's decided they're an influencer. They've had one dog. They've started an online course, and then you're thinking, this person really doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
They're just an excitable person with a big smile, and they're pretty happy about themselves.
Yeah.
And they've put a rando course together.
Yeah.
And mate, believe me, that is happening like crazy at the moment.
That's happening.
And forgive me, I know this sounds very derogative, but part of raising the bar and cleaning up the industry, that's not it.
Yeah.
That's making sure you fuck people over, because then when they realize they've just done a training course with some skid mark that scalped them for thousands of dollars, and all they did was had a bit of a laugh along the way. But then when they come to actually try and put the theory into practice and it falls apart on them like it's built on a house of cards, that's where the problem lies in.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. This is not to say you should just buy from you or me or Narelle. That's not what it is, because there's scores of people out there that I think are fabulous people.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I look at their content. I look what they give away for free. I've talked about this last episode when we talked about some insane pain in the ass who's causing problems, who's just an NPC of the dog world, like a non-player character who's not even relevant, but creating hysterioism. Is that a word? Hysterioism? It is now. We can call it a TCP original. But that's really where we're going down this suck hole, and we're starting to see the decline of society. Like, we're really seeing a decline in society at the moment, like in multiple levels, in different fronts, you know, across political atmospheres and dog training atmospheres. It's just crazy how people are getting away with being crazy whack jobs, but there's too many cowards that aren't standing up to them. There's too many people that just aren't coming forward. Like, I get criticized for this, but I don't really care. I don't really care, because I'm sick and tired of it. Like, I just think more people need to stop being cowards about this sort of thing and say, hey man, what you're doing is bringing the industry down. Like, when we're trying to reform this and build it up and build evidence-based material that's backed on real science, not just your big feelings and your strong emotions, like, we really need to stand up to these people and say, what you're doing is just poor quality, mate. You should go into a different field. Go and find your fun again, because you're really sucking the life out of the room.
I guess for sure, like, I take it very seriously that people have paid a lot of money to go to that kind of thing.
Which is good.
And that there's a lot of hidden costs involved in attending a boot camp like that, because they're away from their workplace for a week. They've had to travel. Yeah, so there's a lot of different things. So they're paying much more than what they're just paying me. And then, of course, you know, we're renting a big property and there's lots of people involved that make it all possible. So it's something that I take really, really seriously, and that I want to provide these people value.
Here's a compliment for you.
I'll take it.
But it is a genuine compliment, not just because we're friends and we're in the room together. You make yourself approachable, and you consider these things about the people that you serve. I know how much thought and processing you put into this. There are people who aren't incredibly big people in the dog world who just make themselves unobtainable to ask questions to. Even me, and I'm not saying that I'm an important person, but even me, I can't get through to these people. Like, they will not answer my calls. They are not servicing their fan base of people who want to just say hello, or just, I respond to every single person who messages on social media.
Oh, really?
Every single person
I feel bad about that. But like, so this is the thing. I found in our Patreon today a bunch of messages that we didn't get. There's just too many ways for people to contact me. So I respond.
That's primarily why we developed the discussion group.
Yeah.
Is because we want to try and funnel it into there, and that way we can actually see, and that way people can tag us into it. Because you're right, people can get lost in the ether.
Yeah, and email's the one. So I decided a while back, I was like, I'm going to return my emails.
Yeah.
Because I just can't stay across 6 different messaging apps, then within Instagram, within Facebook, within every platform, there's a way for people to DM you. And I can't stay up to date on all of that and follow all the conversations. Especially Instagram's one of the worst ones, right? You post a story that's funny. Say I post something that is a laugh, then heaps of people react with the laughing emoji, but then you're mid-conversation with someone and you know that person's real name, but you don't know what their stupid Instagram handle is about their dog's peculiarity, and that's why they called their Instagram handle that.
Yeah.
So how the fuck do I ever find that again, right?
Yeah,
It's buried under all this shit. So that's why I just said, a couple of years ago, actually, it was no, I'm going to respond to all my emails. Email, especially if it's work related, email me. My email is right there on the website. It's available. But email, I feel puts up a little bit of a barrier because email is a more formal process. People, one of the things that drives me insane is when people send me hey, how you going? ... And then next sentence and then gets sent. And then, so I come back to 40 messages that are all going off in my pocket, and it's just one person that loves hitting the enter button, right? Rather than having a thought out. That's why I like email, is that people don't bounce emails back and forth, It's
they don't pause the conversation.
Yeah, well, here's my fact, or here's my question, or whatever it is. It's a paragraph long, and I'll respond with what's appropriate back, and we can do that till the cows come home. That's why I like it.
Yeah, nice.
Anyway, hey, we had an actual topic. Should we get on to that?
We should. So what I wanted to get into, because it seems to be coming up in conversation more and more and more, and funnily enough, full disclosure, I am developing a course around it with a group that I'm working with at the moment on aggression.
Okay. Can't call it that. There's a book called that.
No. It's not going to be called on aggression. It's not poor old comrade. He'd roll in his grave. But it is on dealing and introducing the concept of aggression to a beginner market, because I feel that that's very important, and I feel that's probably a conversation that we have had a lot of. We've had little conversations where we've talked about aggression. We've possibly done this in an earlier episode where newer listeners, unless they're binging on the episodes, won't have joined in on the conversation.
We did a early Patreon, our second or third Patreon one was a aggression specific thing.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good one to remind ourselves that the information, although it's not really escalating to a point where there's an immense amount of new information, there still is new information
there's an evolution
coming out.
Of everything.
You're exactly right. I've got before us the Canine ladder of aggression. There's an indicator or a continuum, pretty much the same as what the security and the policing or the armed force agencies have, which they call the use of force continuum. And I know that we definitely talked about that before. But the use of force continuum in the security industry primarily teaches you that you need to remain a step ahead of your opponent all the time. I was watching a video, I'm digressing a little bit here, but I was watching a video of a police officer attending a scene, and then while he was dealing with somebody who was unconscious, somebody else in the party, a civilian, came over and attacked him and started kicking him and punching him. And the police officer got up and tased the guy. This is in the US, and received a lot of criticism. People saying, why didn't you go toe-to-toe? You need to learn how to fight better. No, you need to control the situation. You need to bring the situation to an end. You're not there to get busted up just because some guy wants to get on social media that he punched a cop up. Or a security officer. That is absolutely ridiculous that people would even have that concept. This is why I'm saying society is a little broken at the moment, that people think because they're in that defunding the police and hating the police, there's some dickhead police out there who've done some dumb shit. But for the majority of them, they put their fucking life on the line all the time, and they're the first people you call when you're in trouble.
Exactly.
It's just absolutely outrageous that people get so carried away with it. Anyway, back onto the ladder of aggression.
Carry on.
Because it's similar to the use of force continuum, it's a ladder of aggression, which is a continuum from where the dog starts until the dog obviously shows aggression towards you and bites you. But people have said there's a lot of signs along the way. I'm going to go through what it says in this particular ladder of aggression, and you can agree or disagree, and there's multiple parties who will say it's different, and it's different. So we'll agree to disagree with whatever. But this one says you can start at the bottom, you can start seeing dogs blinking, yawning, and licking the nose. The next point of the escalation is turning their head away. Then they turn their body away, sits and paws. They walk away, creeping with their ears back, tuck their tail under, standing crouched, lies down, legs up, stiffens up and stares, growls, snaps, and then eventually bites. In a lot of industry, especially in daycare and boarding, they have what they call the traffic light system, which is green, amber, red.
Yep.
And this is primarily what this is coloured in. It's the green, amber, red activation list. For all intensive purposes, it's actually a really good way to train people, especially new people who are entering the arena. So they're coming into the industry, whether it be daycare, boarding, training, whatever it may be. They do need to have a solid foundation of what to look forward to because they're at real risk of being bitten. Let's jump rails to another work culture for a second and talk about working in a factory. Yes, there's risk that if you're packing goods that a box might fall on you or somebody might run over your foot with a forklift or something like that. Like there's real genuine workplace danger in everything you do. But boxes on shelves don't have brains. They sit there and it's usually human error that causes the problems. The problem is when we're dealing in facilities such as daycare, boarding and so forth, we're dealing with another species. Often these animals are raised with different people in their own little tribal unit and then they're transposed into yours and then suddenly you're a new person with a new environment that's flooded with olfactory stimuli that the dog is basically going, this is as scary as fuck. Like this environment is just out of control. There is so many dogs here. There is so much noise here. I can smell fear. When you hear me say that, don't misinterpret this that all boarding facilities or daycare facilities are just a smeltering pot of fear. But there'll be dogs there that are fearful. They'll arrive there and fear is normal in new environments. Most of the people who are seasoned professionals know that. And you yourself have an element of fear when you go, or caution when you go into a new area. You'll start producing different types of pheromones in your body. Somewhere along the line, you'll spin out with cocktails because you're thinking, I'm in a new space. This could be dangerous. I don't know how to feel about this. And your body will start producing a different chemical.
Yeah.
And dogs do that readily. They urinate on things. They will discharge anal glands. They'll do a whole bunch of stuff. It's prevalent that we are providing good education for new people coming in industry. We're showing them what to look for and we're showing them how to avoid getting themselves in a situation which ends up with minor grazing all the way up to serious or life-threatening injury. There have been people in boarding facilities that have been killed by dogs before. I won't say it's a famous story, but it's a well-known story of a father who had to turn his son away while the dog was killing him in a kennel.
Yeah, it was in the UK, right?
Yeah, allegedly.
Yeah.
Although I don't know all the nuts and bolts of the story, it has surfaced a couple of times, but just that thought alone is quite terrifying that
horrendous.
exists. You know, that his son had to witness that and he was going through that at the same time, you know, thinking about the safety of his son to stop him in the kennel while the dog was mauling him to death. As we've talked about in earlier shows, there have been people who have done dog sitting where dogs have degloved their face, literally pulled their entire face off, where people have bravely come to be interviewed while they've got, how would you even describe it?
Well, it's horrendous.
Yeah, a horrendous situation where they've bravely shown what the aftermath of that situation is. So we're never going to totally avoid situations where aggression is going to occur, but at least if we have some understanding and some hallmarks around it, like seeing some of these early signs, like starting at the bottom and starting to realize, could this be, or is this at an escalation point where this is cascading down into a problem area for me? And what do I have to do about it? The first thing that I've told staff in the past and my colleagues have told staff in the past when these sort of situations are happening is if you don't know what you're seeing, immediately stop and go and ask someone else. Like there's no point in continuing to go along on a work day where that could be your last day at work, or it could disfigure you to a point where you can't work in the industry anymore because you don't have a hand, fingers on your hand, an arm, whatever it may be. Because some of these most presumably friendly dogs, when they're put in a situation and this dog who, for all intensive purposes, with 99% of the instances he's met with, would be fine, but suddenly he's backed into a kennel and then he sees you and thinks, you're pushing me in and you're not reading my language here. You know, like I've tried to show you multiple times. I've done the blinking or I've done the yawning and I've done the stretching or my hackles have come up or I've got piloerection of my tail or whatever it may be. Like I've shown you all the signs, like I've given you 10 hallmarks to show you, but how do you know what that is when you're an inexperienced person?
Yeah.
And how do you know the time frame that that's going to occur in? Because all dogs are different when they're actually doing it. There's a lot of dogs, they will gradually start staging this, and there are other dogs. In these situations, it's very, very difficult to understand, is this playing out every 10 minutes? Am I getting a new sign from this dog? Or has it suddenly gone from blinking, yawning, and licking your nose to stiffening and staring at you? That's how the escalation point can happen. And that's how it happens with people as well. I know myself from working in pubs and clubs that there are certain times I've been having conversations with people and I've looked up and I've seen the look on the person's face and I thought, oh, they're going to throw a punch at me within 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
And had I not have looked for that and had experience in that and seen that imprinted face on them before, I would be copping a punch in the face. But because I've seen it, I've gone, oh, I need to defend myself. This person's done talking. They're ready to fight. Dogs are very much like this themselves. There are dogs that come into the kennels that they might be great with all the girls, but a guy comes in like me and they decide, no, I don't like you.
Yeah.
You're a big fat dude with a beard and a hat. I'm not copping this. Every other time I've encountered someone like you, it's not gone well for me.
Yeah.
So you're going to be my mark of the day. So I can go into an escalation point, or it might be the total opposite. It might be that the dog is an absolute sweetheart by me. It knows I'm not going to tolerate any shit from you. You know, and we do get dogs like that. We have some strong temperament or demeanor dogs that come in that I can control, but the staff, as soon as they see them, they put it all over them straight away. And they're right to call me. They're right to ask me to come and resolve the situation. That's the best thing that they possibly could have done, is found the correct person to resolve the situation for them. Before I hand over to you, what I want to say to all kennel owners and all daycare owners of facilities is make sure you have that senior person that's able to provide that service on an ongoing basis. You've got to kind of think that that person, if you're a 7-day-a-week business, you need a 7-day-a-week option to have that available to you as well. Because you can't have it that you've got that person there on the weekdays, but then on the weekends, they're non-existent, and then you've got junior staff coming in to save a little bit of money because pay rates are so expensive on the weekends. Therefore, you've got a skeleton staff and you haven't got an experienced senior person there. And then all of a sudden you've got workplace injuries taking place. Simply not good enough. Like, you need to make sure that you're training your staff. They know what these hallmark signs are. They know what's happening when it's presented to them. And then also they've got a senior person that can make the right decisions for them and tell them, hey, you need to step out of this situation. I need to take over for you here. And also that person needs to know, don't be too busy to step in at these stages. Like, if somebody is coming to you with an urgent situation where a dog has escalated from the green zone into the high amber zones or the light red zone, that's a time to pull them out of that situation and say, you go off and do something else. I'll go deal with this dog. But also take care of yourself as well. Make sure that you've got the training and the backup support, because you don't want to be in a situation where fundamentally you go to step in the situation, but you don't have the necessary training or skills to be able to solve it as well. There have been times where I've had to put a bite suit on and go and step in with the dog and let the dog bite me while I'm putting a slip lead on the dog and pulling the dog out of the kennel.
Yeah.
The company has said, we don't want this dog back here again. These dogs shouldn't be in here. And we all agree on that. We all agree.
But in that moment,
It still has to get out of the kennel. And sometimes that doesn't happen while the dog is in the shock of being put in the kennel. Sometimes the real nature of the dog hasn't been revealed. It's like meeting people sometimes. You don't know who a person is until certain periods of time where either they let their guard down, they become intoxicated or something like that. And then suddenly you think, oh, this is you without your mask on, when you were talking about masks before.
Yeah.
Like, this is who you are.
That's one of the masks you're capable of wearing. I think that's
Right.
one of the things that I think about in terms of aggression. Sometimes we have to be careful not to anthropomorphize things.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes it's helpful to reframe around your own feelings, because you never actually know what a dog is thinking and feeling, right? In the same way.
The only way you do is when they behave on it.
Yeah, but even then, you know, like, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of different thoughts and feelings that can drive the same behavior, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we try and understand and extrapolate what a dog is thinking and feeling, but the truth is I can't even tell what you're thinking and feeling, right? Like, what happens inside the black box of your mind, I can't think. But I think it can be helpful to understand that we have all acted at some point in a way that we're not happy with when we reflect upon it, or out of character. And like I told the story on the podcast one time years ago, I had it out with a guy in a way where I couldn't believe that I'd acted in that way. And it didn't end up in a fight, but very nearly ended up in a punch on the street out the front of my house. And it was only because he backed down that it didn't. If it had continued to escalate the way I was pushing it to, it would have been a real fight. But it was because my son was dying in hospital, right? So like I had no time for this guy's bullshit where I would normally have lots of time for this guy's bullshit.
Right.
And so in reflection, it was me. I'm not saying I didn't do that, but I was extremely aggressive towards a guy, and what he did didn't warrant what I did to him or what I pointed at him. I didn't do anything to him other than we had an argument, right? But I reflect on that as like, geez, that was out of character for me, but it was because the circumstances drove me to do that. And I think that that's what we see a lot in terms of this like escalation of aggression, is that sometimes people would say, oh, like dog would never do that. And like, why would this happen? It came out of nowhere and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, but that's layered stress, right? Like layered stress model can result in some pretty innocuous shit being the straw that breaks the camel's back. And that can be what actually brings out the aggression. And that's why I think I agree with you entirely, like understanding all the telltale signs of aggression. But I feel like a bloody broken record about this. And I know that this is not practical for everybody, but I didn't really get very good at understanding aggression until I started working with aggressive dogs on purpose.
Unfortunately, this is something that you have to get your hands dirty on, and sometimes because you're going to encounter it whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying immersify yourself where you're working with really dangerous dogs, but it's coming for you in the industry when you're in there with dogs. It might be inadvertent where you're breaking up a fight and there is just simply a backlash from the dog because it's thinking, I'm in pain and you're trying to pull me out of this situation and I don't know who you are, really. You could be an enemy rather than an ally in this situation, and I'm scared and I'm fucked up and I have to do something about it.
But what I mean by sort of playing in aggression is working with biting dogs. For me, and I know it's not practical that everybody do this, this is one of the reasons why I think there needs to be better courses available to people and stuff like this. And I encourage people to go to clubs and stuff like that. It's why we allow so many visitors at club, people who are kind of a pain in the ass to be around sometimes because they're just another body in the training space that isn't necessary. But I encourage people to come because like you should see what it looks like before a dog bites.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or switching drives between defense and predatory minded
That's
mindsets.
Right. So when we, because we put a lot of work into doing it, we're intentionally teaching these dogs that play in the sports or do the real world work to drive channel. They can kick themselves in and out of defense to prey and that kind of stuff very quickly. And more so than sort of Mother Nature would normally allow for, we teach them how to do that and control their emotional state in that way. I can show you really quickly what it looks like just before a dog gets so angry he's going to bite you, right? Because we're doing that on purpose to dogs, because these are dogs that we're training to do this and to control that behavior. And I think that's one of the things that when we see the videos of people being bitten and all that kind of stuff, you sometimes hear, oh, it came out of nowhere or there was no signs. And then we watch the videos, we're like, oh, there's a fucking million signs here, right? Like that dog is doing everything it can to tell you that it wants out of this situation and it's prepared to bite you to get out of this situation. You just didn't know what to look for. And that's fair because if you haven't seen it, you haven't seen it. Dogs are hardwired to read humans, but humans sure as fuck are not hardwired to read dogs.
We were, but we've let technology regress our capability to...
I think, though, it's something you have to learn, right? Like you have to learn it over time. And
that's why we were good at it, because we used to teach each other to be rural-minded, to know how to not to be a dickhead around animals.
Yeah. So I think a lot of those stress signs, especially some of the really early stress signs, yawning is a good one, for example, right? Like a dog can yawn because it's tired, for sure.
Yeah.
But if you're like, if it's laying around,
a dog is yawning. Then
if it's laying around on the couch and it sort of glances up from its slumber and yawns, no worries.
Yeah.
He's just yawning, same as you would, right? It's probably, the function of a yawn perhaps is like that physiological sigh. It's to stop the sacs in your lungs from closing. Like there's a function to it.
Yeah.
But if your dog is standing there looking at something and it yawns, that is a very early sign of like, okay.
Something's stressing you.
Yeah, you have taken the first step towards demonstrating that you're uncomfortable in this situation. But I think lots of people don't see that, right? There was a time when I didn't know that to be the case. I remember someone said to me one time, like, oh, he's yawning, he's stressed. I was like, what the fuck does that mean? Like a long time ago, right? Like he's not stressed. Look at him, he's fine. He's great. No, he was super stressed because he was yawning. But I didn't know that. And then most people can understand like the tail tuck and they think that that's just fear, and fear will result in getting away. And maybe if you can get away, but that dog's probably on leash, right? So therefore you can't get away. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we see, as trainers, we get called a lot for on leash reactivity. And I think that's usually one of the first things that when you explain to people, the dog will say, oh, he's great off the leash. It's only when he's on the leash. So few average pet dog owners put together that it's because he's trapped, right? Like that's why it's a problem. He doesn't believe that you're going to assist him to get away, and that now he can't run because he's stuck where you're keeping him. He has to go forward. And that to us as dog trainers is like, yeah, no shit. Like that's week one, day one.
Yeah.
But to the average person, that's not intuitive. That doesn't stand out to them as obvious.
But that's why I wanted to add this in, is we can never get to a point in our professional careers where we just assume that everybody knows this, because in episodes we've done before and just even talking points where we've talked about it, the problem with becoming an expert in any area is that you forget how difficult the fundamentals were to learn at the beginning. Now you've got to a level where you just think, oh yeah, I'm on automatic pilot. This is how I just surf through life. It's easy. Just do this. It's not easy. And it never was. It never was easy for you, and it's not easy for the next group of people that are coming through. It's always difficult because sometimes it either has to be spelled out to you, or sometimes you have to learn, hopefully not the hard way. There have been times where I've worked with people and they've come in and said, oh, I got bitten the other day. And I said, describe it for me. Tell me what happened. Give me the breakdown. I want to learn what happened. And they tell me, and I said, so what did you take away from it? The good thing is, if you're dealing with a sensible person who hasn't let their emotions run away on them, they will sometimes, because it's as scary as fuck when you get confronted by a dog who wants to do something to you other than lick you and play with you. The good thing is when those people have deconstructed what happened and they've said, yeah, look, I should have looked at this. This is something that you've talked about. This is something I've learned on another course. This is something I read in a book, or this is something I saw on YouTube or something like that. I did actually see it. I pushed the point. I shouldn't have. I realize that now. And I said, so what are you going to do in the future? Not that. And what would you do differently? How would you de-escalate that situation? They said, I was, as you described before, I was in a situation where I didn't realize I was pinning the dog in. What I would do is make sure that the dog has freedom to move away, give the dog exit clauses in the room or in the area, or if there's another dog there, like I'd move this dog away, I'd do this and that. That's a great way to have these conversations. You can't give people all the information and expect them to retain it sometimes. You need them to actually understand it. As part of being a coach, I'm sure you do this when you're working with your people, is you'll get to a point where you tell them a lot of information, but then you start asking them questions. They're not just a player on the board. They're actually somebody who's participating in this conversation. That's a real pathway to learning, like asking people, all right, now that I've talked about all this, what did you learn about this? What do you understand? What's your takeaway points to this? And what could you add to that as well? Like, what are the things that I haven't talked about that you've seen in other situations? Because I've given credit to many of the staff before that some of these people are far better understanding dog behavior than you and I are, because they're in the kennels with these dogs every single day. Like that's their 9 to 5 job, 5 days a week, or even if they're doing 3 or 4 days a week, but they're still doing 8 hours where they're transporting dogs, they're moving dogs, they're cleaning them. Like I was watching one of the staff here the other day bringing out one of the Rottweilers, and they were doing health checks on the dogs, like lifting the gums up and, making sure they could look in the mouth and see that the dog's teeth were all correct and picking the paws up. And I thought, beautifully done and so confidently handled with a strong, robust working breed of dog. But the dog realized, I'm safe, I'm cool, this situation doesn't call for any retaliation or any escalation here. This person cares about me. They've proven that in the past, and they went about their job. And I complimented them. I walked past and said, nice job handling that dog. And they said, oh, thanks. It's just a Tuesday. That's my job.
Yeah.
But for me, I've seen that go bad so many times because people have been intrusive in those sort of situations where they've started to stick their finger in the dog's mouth or insist on showing the teeth, and they can't see the evolution of aggression starting to form around it because they're not paying attention to all the hallmark signs that are going on. Like you indicated before, there have been many conversations where that has cropped up and people have said, I didn't see that coming. I had no idea. It just came from nowhere. It rarely does.
Yeah.
It rarely comes from nowhere. I mean, even in situations where I remember one day when I was working security and I was with a bunch of people and this guy just came up and socked another guy in the head. And everyone said, oh, it came from nowhere. He was just instantly punched him. And I said, these things really come from nowhere. And I said, I ain't got time to look into the backstory of this, but something has happened between these two in the past. Even though this guy, yes, he was minding his own business, there's a huge backstory. There's a big cavity that we're not a part of that story. And I said, all we have to do is deal with it and throw both of them out and allow the police to press charges or whatever. That's our job. As it happened, there was a whole backstory about that came out in the following weeks where people came up and said, oh, you know that guy that punched this other guy? Well, he did this thing to his family and blah,
it
blah,
was
blah.
in
And I said,
retaliation for
exactly.
something.
And I said, yeah, but this is just the perfect melting pot or the place where they actually met each other and they were in a environment where they could make this happen. And unfortunately, we got to witness that and then had to deal with that as a repercussion. Now, those sort of things happen in daycare facilities. I'll use daycare facilities, not so much with boarding because it's a little bit more controlled and a little bit more corralled. But in daycare facilities, there might be an incident that's taken place between two dogs where the other dogs thought, this is not going to be unleft. Like it's unleft for today, but next week I'm going to do something about this. When I get my opportunity to hit again, I'm coming in and it's guns blazing when I'm doing this. And people say, dogs don't do that.
They do. That's the problem. So
that's the problem.
That doesn't mesh with what we sort of understand about, or we think we understand about dogs.
Because we think they just wipe the slate. Like they're like goldfish. They just swim around a tank and they forget everything every 5 seconds. But the more I've been around the dogs, there's a lot more intelligence around them that science really needs to catch up on. And it is. It's catching up on. And even, like I've said, even in the evolution of time that I've been in there and the things that I've seen and the wives' tales that have been debunked over time, like dogs seeing in black and white and all these statements that people have made, it's just been old mate making a guesstimation. You know, like this is what I think I know about dogs. I'll impress my grandchildren with it and I'll be the life of the party telling stories about dogs. And people go, cool. But then science goes, well, you know, that's actually not factual now that we've had funding and we can put time and research into it. As I've said to people before, and crazy thing is, I've made a lot of bold statements and I have professed so many times, I'm not a scientist. I don't have any science backing in me at all. I've got diplomas in adult education and so forth, but I'm not a scientist. Narelle is, I'm not. But she's not an animal scientist either. But the one thing that I do have is keen observation. Like I get to see a lot of experience and I get to see the evolution of this play out because I'm in the same place watching the same dogs and the same behaviors all the time. So I actually get to see it. And if anyone knows anything about science, it's based on keen observation. It's based on changes over time that scientists get to sit there and record and make notation on, but yet they have a title to say, I'm a scientist, I get the credibility of saying this. That's fine. I can sit comfortably with that. When I've made statements like this in the past and I've said things and people have gone, poo, poo, poo. And then suddenly science comes along and says, hey, this is actual fact. Like, for example, I used to tell people 30 years ago that I didn't think that desexing puppies was a very good idea under a certain amount of age. I said, I just don't think what I'm seeing in dogs at the moment with all this mandatory desexing going on at young ages, I'm saying that multiple times, is a great idea. And people used to say, but mate, you're not a vet. Like, why would you say things like that? Stick to your lane. Now we've got vets and we've got neurologists coming out and saying, hey, you're pulling major organs out of dogs. Yes, we don't want all these
unwanted pregnancies
and matings going on, and we don't want to add to the wastage issue. And I agree with all that. I'm down with that. But we're cutting sexual organs out of dogs for our convenience as well, because sometimes people are just fucking lazy and they cause this catastrophic process for our dogs to have their sexual organs removed at a young age. And now there's real science that is backed for what I was saying 30 years ago when I was taking a hard line against it and yet received mass criticism over it for something that I could see. Like I could see the changes in the dogs. And
so to what we were talking about in terms of, I think dogs do hold grudges and that doesn't gel with what we're kind of told about dogs, right? And memory and stuff. But I mean, see it. Like I'll see like dogs will just take a disliking to a particular person.
A lot of times it's through odor as well.
Yeah. And
it's odor memory, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, I think probably a lot of dogs' memories are stored olfactory. Like they're stored as an odor.
Yeah.
Odor definitely triggers it does this in humans as well. Like you can really, like, you know, you smell someone from your past that smelled a particular way, and then someone you meet now reminds you of them because of like the perfume they wear or whatever, and massive memory recall of the original scent. And so like a dog lives in that space kind of 24/7.
I just want to draw on that quickly to provide evidence for all that. Again, based on observation that I've had, most people have seen this. It's no groundbreaking material, but if a dog that has had an issue with you in the past sees you again sometime later, they'll walk towards you with enthusiasm and their tail up and they're wagging, and then they'll take a couple of sniffs in the air. And you can usually see them take those couple of like identification puffs where they go like that. And that's where they go, oh, it's fucking you.
Yeah.
You're the guy that I don't like.
Yeah.
I've seen that multiple times where it's not so much the approach or the vision, it's those couple of identification snorts where they sniff you in and they go, oh, now my brain's just got an image of who you are and I've got a total recall on that entire thing that happened between us or why I don't like you.
And you'd see the opposite. You probably see the opposite here every day. My observation with my own dogs, it's about 2 weeks. If I'm away from my dog for about 2 weeks, he doesn't recognize
The
me.
reconnection?
Yeah, he doesn't recognize me until he smells me.
Yeah.
It seems pretty clear to me. And you would see that here at the kennel all the time, right? Like
all the
people,
time.
their dog comes out of the kennel, they're
They
like,
go, "Who are you?"
Fido, I'm here. And if it's a nervy dog, all they see is a stranger approaching them.
Yeah, it jumps into the hands of the pet nanny and says, protect me from this person.
And
Who
then
is this?
the people close in, like, what the fuck? And then the dog gets a whiff of them and the body changes altogether. And you see that there's a million videos of this of people like soldiers that get reunited with their dog after a 6-month deployment. The dog's always real weird about them at the start and then goes, oh, fuck, I recognize you because I've taken in your odor and now I have the memory of who you are. For sure, dogs hold grudges. We see that all the time. And certainly it appears that they can hold grudges against particular dogs. I remember the first time someone said this to me and I was like, oh, bullshit. And then they were right. Well, dogs that don't like particular breeds of dogs, you know, and it can be like hyper specific. They can be, but again, that's probably not that you don't like that breed. It can be that there's an odor attached to that particular
or they just
whatever.
don't have an experience with them.
Yeah.
Probably in a past conversation, but when I was at the Roddy Club, I insisted that people bring if they had a second dog, bring the dog to training. I said, I don't want this to just be
Just Roddies.
a single breed dog when these dogs already have issues in public. I want these dogs to have experience meeting little dogs and big dogs and have your kids come down but not interrupt the training so these dogs can participate in a social experiment that we can make sure that they have soundness and they have the capability to understand this is just a Tuesday. You know, this is what we do. This is how life goes on in the world. And I think those sort of things, as you and I have stipulated on our long journey of podcasting and doing this together, this is part of raising the bar together. This is how we get out and educate people and stop people getting bitten at work. You're never going to eliminate it, but we can reduce it because we can teach people these are things that you're going to see.
So precursor signs, that's what you're talking about, is a precursor signs to aggression.
Yeah.
And your graphic here, can we post this somewhere so that when people, so we can put this
on the discussion group.
we'll put this in the discussion group so that people can look along. The bottom, blinks, yawns, licks nose. So that's the kind of shit that most people are going to miss.
Yeah.
Right? And probably because those are fairly normal dog things.
But that's hard to diagnose too when you're not a seasoned professional because you and I have talked about before where my dog will lick his lips because he drools a lot.
Yeah.
Mando licks his face because when he knows I've got food in my pockets and he's out there, he's salivating and he's thinking, I've got to clean the salivation off my... So that's a hard one to diagnose because I've seen situations like that before. You know, we've had seminars here in the backyard where that's going on and I've heard people going, oh, he's getting stressed. He's licking his lips.
Yeah.
And that is so poorly diagnosed by the concert of professionals who are sitting in the back row, cherry picking some of the things they're seeing. There's probably a 1 in 5 chance that they're getting it right. And there are people in there that are nailing it because they actually know what they're looking at and they do work in welfare organisations. They have been cleaning kennels. They've seen it plenty of times. So they do understand the hallmarks of it. But there's so many people who are just seeing things where the dog is going, oh, I know this. You know, my handler's got food in his pockets. I want some of this. I'm salivating in anticipation of getting it. That's like saying to a human, oh, do you know you've got snot coming out of your nose? Or having someone wipe their nose and saying, oh, you're stressed.
You're stressed, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so what I want to just as we climb up here, because I think one of the things that's interesting about aggression and all these precursors to it is that they're also precursors to other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that sometimes we're all guilty of seeing what you want to see, but I think that sometimes people see aggression where it isn't or they ignore it where it is. So like our second step here is turns head away. Now, if the dog isn't actually involved in a session with you, That's a difficult thing. Like, he turns his head away from what? Like, was
And
he just
how?
looking around?
Yeah, but how does he turn his head away from you? The same exists in human body language. How did the person turn away from you?
But if you don't have a connection with the dog, right? If you're just observing the dog, how can you even tell that it's turned its head away? Because it's only if you're involved in the session. Like, I can tell when I'm training a dog, when I'm with it, because I'm training it to do something. If it turns its head away from me, that's an indicator of something, right? But I have built a ton of engagement prior so that head turning away is different from the norm. Whereas if you're just like observing the dog and it's walking around, you're in the same space as it, most people aren't going to notice where its head was in order to turn away from anything. And so our next one turns body away, sits and paws. And so same deal, right? Like, unless you're actually involved with the dog, just observing it, what's it turning it away from, right?
Exactly.
Like, and how do you determine that? Our next one walks away. Yeah, but like walks away in what regard, right?
Yeah.
So like the dog's probably moving. It has to exist.
If it walks away with its tail tucked and it's walking away on its belly, then you could say, okay,
clearly.
That's clearly a sign, you know.
Yeah.
But sometimes dogs will just walk away because they're thinking, oh, I'm done with you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Or like a really powerful dog that is gonna fuck you up if you give it the chance to, will walk away in a way dismissively, right?
That's a good point.
Yeah, so you get some dogs
I think we should unpack that a little bit more.
Well, you get some dogs that will turn their back to you in a way of like, I don't acknowledge you in my space, right? Like if you get it, and I think this is one of the things is we don't see too many real powerfully aggressive dogs. That's one of the things that we do because they're our favorite kind of dogs.
They're in our space,
right? But
they're being encouraged out of the world too.
Yeah, when you get one every now and again that turns up, a lot of people don't even recognize what that animal is. Like when you get a truly dominant dog, which there aren't many of, like Mother Nature doesn't create many of them because that would be a fucking headache if their world was full of them.
Yeah, I agree.
But every now and again, you get a dog that really thinks of himself as something or has been built into feeling that way. And when he could walk away from you powerfully, and that could be a big sign, like do not follow that dog because he's potentially luring you into a trap, right? Like he's inviting you into the kennel, into his fucking closed space. Good luck, right? So this is the thing, like I don't think these signs are not as linear as it may seem.
I'm glad you brought that up because there's an expression that we used to talk about early in the day, which is beware the C-shaped mouth. Often with those types of dogs, when you're seeing a dog that's defensive and it's not really dedicated to the bite itself, they generally have, and this is not in all cases, so please don't read this in that this is an absolute, but in a lot of these dogs, they'll have what's called the V-shaped mouth, where the mouth is very extended back, like all molars are showing. Canines are usually very prominent, ears are down, eyes are very dilated, and there's a lot going on, and there's not a lot of time to see all this because even though that dog is mainly defensive and it's trying to get itself out of that position, it still can potentially bite you and it still can be a very dangerous, if not a fatal situation. Even defensive dogs can still kill you. They'd rather not, like they'd rather just tag and run.
If they're trapped.
But the dogs, the ones that you're talking about, those truly dominant dogs, if they've got no expression at all, it's harder to tell. But if they've got the C-shaped mouth, which is like only showing a small amount of teeth, and usually it looks like a funny smile. You know, when you see those Dalmatians or something like that, they do those funny little smiles. Those dogs that are transmitting that sort of image, that C-shaped mouth, they're fucking dangerous dogs.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the early mentors I had a dog come back at me, come back the line. He was just through frustration. Come back, I caught him by the collar, didn't get bit, was holding him, waiting for him to calm down. And he looked like he had calmed down, right?
Oh,
like
is this the story you told me last week with the dog at training?
No. This is a different dog. This was early days of my career, right?
Yeah.
This dog, he came back the line. I managed to catch him, lucky, because I certainly didn't have the skill set that I have now. Whereas like the story I told you last week had a dog properly come at me. I skeeved him once and then realized, I'm not going to get a second shot. I'm not going to get a second shot and caught him by the face, right? Like literally grabbed him by the face and was like, hey, calm down. And because he was a dog that knew how to drive channel, he did calm down. I didn't get bit, right?
But that's the experience that we're trying to tell people. Like you're funneling years worth of handling these dogs into being able to make that catch.
So anyway, this dog comes back the line at me. I managed to catch him. I've got him by the collar. I'm sort of holding him still. I've got him between my legs. He's pinned. He can't get to me. He can't twist his head around to bite me. I'm just waiting for him to calm down, right? And he goes loose in the body and I'm about to let him go. And the guy with me is like, no. He's not done.
Yep.
right? You have to keep him a bit longer. If you let him go, he's going to turn around and bite you. And so I just did what I was told, right? And then afterwards I was like, hey, what did I miss? And he goes, his tongue was still in between the line of his teeth. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, he's preparing to bite you. If you're in some sort of like tricky situation with a dog, your dog that just is hanging around, his tongue's hanging out the side of his head. That's how dogs do it, right?
Yeah.
But the moment that he pulls his tongue in the line of his teeth, that's a choice, right? Like
that's a very good observation.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like this is when you get into these big picture things that we're looking at here. Let's
They're
go
not
up
the little nuances like that.
Nah, and so that's what taking in the whole picture, because let's keep going up, right? So creeps and has its ear back. That's what a dog does when it's stalking. Could be super repetitive, right?
Yeah.
But also could be super dangerous.
Kelpies do that.
Exactly, right? But like a Malinois will do that if you let them like pursue a ball nice and slowly, ears go back and they go into a stalk.
It's funny you say that. You were doing a session with the guys. This is several months ago. I was talking to Dom and Theo and some of the guys in there, and I said, watch the ears of the dog. Watch when Pat has the full attention of the dog versus half the attention of the dog. And I said, ears are like little radar dishes. He will be listening for the owner because the owner is standing behind it. And I said, but watch when Pat brings him up in a drive and his ears change from listening to the owner, like he flips his ears around and everything is engaged. Dom, who's been around dogs for a long time, is no dummy, goes, oh, fuck, I've never really paid any attention to that. And I said, when we talk about these little nuanced points, those are the little things that you got to start paying attention to. Like Baseman Jack's song, Where's Your Head At? Frequent question I keep saying, I say that in my mind to every dog I'm out. I don't say it personally to them, but I'm thinking to myself every time I'm out with a dog, because I'm usually pulling problem dogs out, where's your head at? Like, what are you going to do when we cross this threshold? Even that dog that I was talking about the other day where I had to suit up and go and pull it out of the kennel, he wanted to fight me while I was in the kennel, and I knew he's locked in the kennel. It's going to be a fight. I have to do this. He's a big shepherd and we're going to have to duke it out here a little bit. So I went in there. I didn't hurt him. He tagged me a couple of times. I got the lead on him. As soon as I had the lead on him, he looked at me and went, oh, I don't want to fight anymore.
Yeah.
And I went, yeah, cool. And I just dragged him out and put him in his owner's car.
Yeah.
I told him what was going to happen. I said, listen, there's going to be a bit of barking, a bit of scuffling. I'm not going to hurt your dog. I'm not kicking him. I'm not punching him. Nothing untoward's happened to him. The only person who's getting hurt here is me. And I said, all I'm going to do is make this a quick evacuation. I'm getting in there as fast as I can. It took me 15 seconds of entire time of getting in the kennel. By the time I had the lead around his neck and by the time I dragged him out, it was 15 seconds until I had him in their car, because the car was parked right outside. I literally stormed him straight outside and threw him straight in the back of the car.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing was, once he was in a situation where he knew this fight was done, he just looked at me and went, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm out. I'm finished with the fight. Whereas the dogs that you're talking about, those problematic dogs, they don't play that game that way. They're basically going, oh, I'd love you to come in here and I don't want this to end.
Yeah.
Like this for me is the ultimate form of reinforcement to fuck you up.
Yeah, and they're the really dangerous
They're
dogs.
very dangerous dogs.
The others are going to tag you. You're going to
Yeah.
get a bite. You maybe draw blood, but these are dogs that are going to persistently get you.
These are dogs that are looking for elimination.
Yeah. So we keep going up, right? So we're in the yellow or the amber zone
section,
here.
yeah.
Tucks tail under.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. But also a dog that's concentrating real hard will tuck its tail as well,
Yeah.
right? So like you watch a good tracking dog, it will look like it's terrified. Or a dog that's really done a lot of box feeding as well. For sure, some people put too much pressure on their dogs in the box and you can cause some discomfort in there. For sure, I've seen that. But you look at a really good tracking dog, its tail is completely tucked while it's doing that.
It's not so much that it's completely, well, it could be. I'm not ruling it out, but it's generally that the dog is just at such a relaxed state when because
well,
they're
it's
in
concentration.
That's right. They're in flow state.
Yeah, he's concentrated,
Yeah,
and
so
so
they're-
shuts the trap door.
They've got no muscle,
Well, they look like, like when a dog's tracking really well, it looks the same as like a totally fearful dog because they're shutting that trap door. They're like closing down for business. Like I'm covering up my anal gland so no one knows what the fuck's going on with me because I'm busy doing this.
Yep.
But so, still going up, stands crouched. Okay, well, so does a dog that's about to jump on something it fucking loves.
Yep.
Right? Now we're...
or a dog that doesn't feel well.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, so sickness can be an elevation of aggression as well.
So stiffen stares,
Yep.
anticipation. So like you could have the ball and I can get any dog that wants the ball, I can get it to stiffen and stare.
There's dogs that play in yards together that before they pounce on the other dog in play,
Yeah.
if they're staring intently and they're stiff, their ears will pin back, they'll pull, their skin will tighten on their face.
Yep.
an inexperienced person can look at that and go, oh my God, this dog is about to maul this other dog.
Yeah.
But it's purely just the anticipation and the joy of the game.
Yeah. So then now we're into the red growls.
Yep.
Some dogs just growl like
Rottweilers.
Yeah, like they growl. That's just how they purr almost. And some dogs will growl like on the grip, like we're playing tug with them. They're growly as shit. That freaks people out. You're like, no, that's not the same thing. So then we're into the proper red snaps. Okay, so that's probably fair enough, right? Now we're in real aggression. But the peak thing here, the reddest of reds at the top, bites. I know tons of dogs. We had a dog in the army, this dog Chevy. It's hard to find a Dutchie in Australia that hasn't got Chevy in the bloodline. He was one of the first Dutchies that kind of really got bred in Australia.
Yep.
He'd bite you in the ass all the time for fun. With no aggression. Don't get me wrong, this dog had real aggression in him. But if you were cleaning his kennel, he'd run over and tag you like a little nip in the ass, and you'd turn around and he'd be in a play bow ready to go.
Because he's learned that that's the way to get your attention.
Yeah. So, but my point is with this ladder of aggression is I think that when people pay too much attention to this and go, well, that's how it is. And you go, no, there's a whole picture that has to be taken in here, right? Like there's a whole...
But that's where experience draws you in.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because this ladder is good for the layperson. They're looking at it and they're thinking, look, I lack the experience and I don't know. I'd rather not get into high amber and red zone.
For sure.
I'd rather call my supervisor in or the senior person.
That's right. And so it's a great start point.
It is. It's a great start point.
For sure, worth other understanding.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean is like we see people, you see comments like people will be doing like incredible dog training and someone will, like the comments will be, oh, the dog's licking, it slips, it's stressed. And it's like, yeah, no shit. It's stressed about whether it's getting the ball on this rep or the next rep, right? Like that's what it's stressed about. So no one of these things is an indicator of a guarantee, oh, that's what's happening. But as you start putting it in, you start like, oh, there's multiple of these signs, right? Like, and I'm drawing together the whole picture of the situation that the dog is in, the way that the dog is acting. All of that is going to develop the picture of like what we can expect to see from the dog if we persist. And of course, we don't want to persist if that's our goal is to, like when we're trying to get rid of aggression, our goal is to not ever see it again.
Yeah.
Right. So we use this as for sure a flow chart, exactly as you pointed out, as like threat escalation from the dog, but also it needs to be taken in as a whole picture rather than like, oh, he licked his lips. We're in danger.
Yeah. Remembering the point that I think we raised before is that don't be under any illusion that you can't go from bottom green to top red in no time at all.
Yeah, in an instant.
Everything else can be superseded. There are people that I know, they can take me from green to red in instances. Like I can be that person when I'm in their company because that's how irate I feel around them. Because they're that type of person who just draws that out of you straight away. And even though you might say, well, control yourself and deep breathe and walk away from the situation, you just know that they're the sort of person. We've all got those people.
Yeah. Or circumstance or place, all that can happen to everybody depending on prior learning.
Exactly. So if we have those levels of control and that level of civilization around us, imagine how hard it is for a dog who doesn't have this prior education that I'm supposed to behave based on this escalation table to go from green to amber to red to suffice you. That's not going to happen. Mother Nature doesn't play those rules, baby.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking that that's how it's going to play out for you, you're lacking the education again to say that that's how it's going to be. Sometimes staff have come and gotten me or they've gotten somebody else and somebody in the organization has said, was that really necessary? And I've defended the person. I said, well, yeah, it is because they're lacking the education around it and they don't feel safe. And that lack of safety from them could be the escalation point that ticks that dog into the next box or escalates it further on there because the dog goes, well, you're acting weird and you smell weird and you corner him in this cage. And everybody else goes, oh, he's a sweet. I can't tell you how many times people have said that to me before. They've said, oh, he's a sweetie, he's lovely. I've walked in, the dog's going, not with you.
Yeah.
Or I say it. And other people have said, that dog that you reckon was really chill? Well, he went for me in the kennels. Once again, I'll say, tell me all about it. Give me a blow-by-blow on what happened. Yeah, like what tripped that in? So sometimes we've just concluded this dog doesn't like females or this dog doesn't like males or this dog doesn't like older males or it doesn't like younger females.
Yeah.
There's people you meet in your lifetime, sometimes you just immediately don't like them and you don't know why you don't like them. So once again, if we feel like this, with all our mechanisms of control and layers of and masks that we use to control our identity and control and suppress our feelings, dogs are very honest about this sort of thing. And that's a great thing about dogs is that generally, unless it's been trained or suppressed out of them or crushed out of them, they're very honest with how they feel about things.
Yeah.
That's a one statement that I can always say is any dog that I've ever been bitten by has been very honest about it. Like there's been no cloak and dagger about it. It wasn't like the dog just snuck up on me and went, bang, surprise, this happened. But then when you break it all down and you look at the backstory behind it and think, yeah, I could see that coming if I was paying attention to it. But a large part of the reason that we don't see being bitten is through education or we weren't paying attention at the time. Well, there's a lot of times where I've said to people when they've been handling the dog, and, you know, it could be redirection and frustration, where I've said to people as a training director or the most senior person there or even just a training buddy, where I've said to people, hey, stop doing what you're doing. You know, decoy, cool yourself, handler, pay attention to what's going on here. There's too much frustration going on, no outlet being allowed to happen.
Yeah. Mate, I think I'm pretty encouraging of trainers, right? So like I usually encourage people to like take on more than you can, fuck it, right? But I think in the aggression cases,
Don't.
well, the big reason I think more than anything is go slowly, go carefully.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that people kind of overlook is like, yes, you could get bit, right? And for the most part, when you get bit by an aggressive dog, you're probably going to be okay, right? And most trainers are sort of like, you know, we've all been bit. If you haven't been bit as a dog trainer, you're going to, I've been bit plenty, I'm going to get bit again. That's life, right? But I think the issue that some people kind of overlook when you want to take on a case that's a bit spicier or you're putting more pressure on the dog than you realize that you are, is that my bugbear is you don't want to be the one that gives that dog a bite history because that's a very different dog now that it's been successful with its aggression, right? So like once you push a dog to actually bite you and it does, and it does resolve the situation because chances are you result in you running out of the kennel. Now the dog is a completely different dog that it on its record, it now has a bite history. That's a much more difficult dog to rehome, to continue to train, like whatever is necessary of the dog. It was successful in its aggression. And so I think that's why one of the reasons why I sort of encourage people don't bite off more than you can chew in that regard. And if you do see these signs, call in help if you don't know what to do, is because you don't want to be responsible for worsening the situation that the dog is in. Even though you might not necessarily make the dog worse, if it bites you and that's reported, like you have made that dog's situation worse.
The counter to that too is, yes, that's a genuine reason, but some of these dogs have ended careers as well.
For sure.
That's one serious aspect that always needs to be considered in these events. I was talking to a colleague of ours the other day, Alicia. Back some time ago, she was bitten by a dog in her workplace. And even to this day, like she was showing me the scars when she was at the last seminar we had here. She was just talking about how she still is recovering from it psychologically.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the physical scarring that takes place. It's, you made a point of it, I think, in last week's episode or the last episode we did where you said, you know, we still have this inherent fear of the wolf. And when you get bitten for realsies or punched in the face for realsies by someone,
things fucking change fast.
Things change fast. So I remember, I don't say this proudly, but there was a guy that was in a club years ago when I was working security. He came up and he threatened to hit me. And I said, dude, not a good idea. And I said, next time you do something like that, I'm bouncing you out of the club. He goes, oh, I'm just mucking around, mate, just mucking around. Call your school. And I said, yeah, well, go and enjoy yourself and behave. So he came back and he did it again and I socked him because he was... I didn't know whether or not he was going to hit me. So I thought, no, I'm not going to have this. I'm pretty sure this guy is lining me up for a strike. So I socked him hard. And the look on his face when I hit him, everything just melted away from him. All his courage just disappeared quickly because he realized not only does this fucking hurt, but I just said, that's a warning shot, mate. And you're going home. And he goes, yeah, I'm sorry, man, I'm out of control. And I said, well, I don't give a fuck. You're not behaving like that in my club. So you're in a taxi. So I walked him out nicely and, you know, he came back next week and he apologized. He had a skin full of piss. He said, oh, look, I don't know what was going on in my head. He goes, I'm really sorry, man. And I said, I'm willing to accept that. But the minute I see that surface again, you're getting walked out hard. And he goes, yeah, it won't happen again. Never did it again.
Yeah.
Never did it again. Never raised his hand. He was always super polite. Now, that's a good story. There's been not so good stories where that's happened, where I've been socked by people and I've realized, you know, like I'm out of my comfort zone in this sort of situation. And I've been confronted by dogs in those same sort of dogs where I thought this dog is far more serious than I've considered and I'm in a serious situation. Now, one of those happened before we do the wind up, which is happening real soon. There was a situation where I was here at Pet Resorts. There was a shepherd that had been a pain in the ass to some of the staff and they all said, Glenn, I'm scared of him. Can you move him around for us? And I said, yep. So I went in with him and he was pretty cool with me most times and I was very respectful of him, but I made a fatal mistake. I went in there and usually when I went into the kennels, I always have a bed or a shield around me where I can quickly get it. And I showed on social media a while ago and I showed it to people where a Legato bit me and, like I had a bed and I was able to fend the dog off and sorted the situation out. It wasn't serious, but he ran around and bit me in the calf muscle. But in this situation with the German Shepherd, I walked into the kennel. I got too confident. I walked down the back. I went to get his water bowl because he'd knocked his water bowl over so I could change his water over because it was a hot night. And as I walked out, the dog confronted me and he wasn't playing fuck arounds. He wanted to bite me. And the only thing I had was a lead with a brass clip on the end of it. So I literally pulled it off and I started swinging it around and he came for me just by sheer luck. Being sheer luck and probably having fight experience in my life, I dodged him and clacked him straight under the chin, like gave it to him. He stopped, turned around, and then he came for me again. And I was still spinning because I thought this is the only thing I've got and I need to make a break for that door, but I've got to get this dog out of the way first. So then he did the same thing. I clocked him again. And that time it hurt him. I could see I got him on the same spot under the chin and it just went bonk and it hit him. And he's sitting there and he's looking at me and he gave me the break I needed. I got to the door and then he came back again for me and I just made it out the door. Now, mate, by the fucking sheer grace of God, I made it out of that situation unscathed. But after that, we didn't have a relationship anymore.
I think people take for granted how fucking dangerous it can be for you here. You got 250 dogs in the kennel. One of them needs its water bowl turned over at 3 a.m. or whatever, and you're in there by yourself. There's no one
coming to rescue me.
Nah, like it's you and the dog alone. And that's how people do get killed in kennels, right? It's when there's no one to help. Because you got a bunch of people, there's a way to sort it, but when it's you alone trapped in the kennel with the dog and you're locked in there so you can't even escape,
so
it's fucking dangerous.
I've been here 14 years. The situation I'm talking about now is isolated, but the amount of times I do have to go in and sort, like there have been times where dogs have torn kennel doors down before because they're so dedicated to getting out. And, like I've had to deal with a dog in the breezeway when I've opened the kennel, there's just a dog coming at me. Now, fortunately, most of the times the dogs aren't aggressive. They're just like, oh, happy to see you.
Someone here to rescue me.
You've rescued me. And we've realized, like this is a dog with escape history and, we've been able to resolve it. But there have been situations for myself and my colleagues where the dog in the breezeway is not a happy dog to see you, and that significantly raises risk because you're going into a dark kennel, because you can hear barking going on. You're trying to resolve the issue and there's a dog loose or several dogs because they're sharing kennels and one dog might be fine, but then you're in a small breezeway with multiple dogs on you and you're thinking, shit, this isn't good.
Yeah.
So that's happened to me before where I've been in the breezeway and I can hear something and I flick the torch on and there's 2 dogs running down the pathway. One's happy, one's not, but usually I've got a bed in tow where I can deflect the dog and break the situation down. But only experience brings you that. And as you indicated before, many years of doing developmental decoy work has prepared me for that sort of thing. Knowing how to esquive dogs, knowing how to get out of the way, knowing how to mitigate the risk, knowing how to catch the dog by the face or by the collar if you need to, just knowing how to move in those situations has saved my ass more than I can tell you. But it's been through the grace of good mentorship where the people who taught me how to train dogs or the people that have shown me how to work with aggression, the people that I paid to mentor under when they were going out doing consults and I got to watch what they were doing, those are the people who taught me those finite skills of fixing those problems. So I've seen a rise in people offering to fix dog aggression problems. I simply got to ask the question is, where are your ethics? There's a lot of times where I see people with integrity or ethics or something like that tattooed in the body. And I think they have it there to remind them of skills that they don't have and just that they need to draw down on that and think, I don't have integrity and I don't have ethics, so I need to remind myself to pretend that I do from time to time. But please, guys, I've got no right to tell you what you can and can't do. But you get the industry in trouble and you get trainers in trouble and you get yourselves in trouble when you're offering some of these skills and services that you're not ready to give. And it's not saying don't do it. It's just learn the craft, learn the skills, bring your development up so you can actually do that well. Andrew Clark has been training people for years and doing a really good job of it, of showing local government how to do courses. A lot of our staff, when he was here, he did talks on showing people how to correctly manage dogs in kennels and just in day-to-day scenarios where if you're going to people's homes, if you're walking down the road and a dog costs you or something like that. Yeah, in situations like that, how to conduct and manage yourself and how to take the least amount of injury if it comes down to the fact that you're going to be injured and the dog is going to bite you. So these are talking points maybe for another day, but there are situations where the dog is going to bite you. There is nothing that you can do about that to prevent it. So what do you sacrifice when the dog comes in? What do you do about it? And there have been people that say, turn your head away, really? Turn your head away from an opponent and present your bum to the dog and, like funky stuff like that I've just thought that's risky when the dog gets you low and it can pull you down to their level and then can fight you on the ground where they're masters of that domain.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to drag this on. I do want to leave with one comment that surprised me the other day, and I have a counter to that, where I kept seeing, for some reason, it started to resurface again, where trainers are calling other trainers out saying they're doing outdated training methods and using dominance theory. Well, if you don't believe in dominance, how come you're using it in sentences? Ta-da-dum.
All right, that's it for another episode of the Canine Paradigm. As always, if you like what you hear, like, rate, share, subscribe. Do that through whatever subscription service you download us from. If you want to support the show, the best way to do that is to jump into Patreon. A few bucks a month gets you a giant backlog of information as well as new stuff going forward. I'm putting a bunch of stuff in there at the moment. You can pay more. You get live streams and
help us pay out our massive
bills.
Bill that we just got. Fuck me dead. It never ends, does it? You just think, I've just got clear of these bills, and then another enormous one comes.
That's 2024.
Yep, exactly.
Another way you can support the show is Spring. You can buy yourself some cool merch. There's links in the show notes to that.
Tapestries all day long.
Get them.
All day long.
If you want to get in contact with us, the best way to do that, jump into the Facebook discussion group. That's where you can group source information. You got stuff you want to say about the show.
Yeah.
You can say it all there.
Do it.
But if you want to get in touch with us individually, you can shoot us an email. We are info@thecanineparadigm.com. I love you. Goodbye.
Bye.